All throughout history, when food production is radically changed rapidly, when agriculture is disrupted, the end result is catastrophic. Europe has been doing this since the Paris Agreement in 2015. The United States would be now exactly where they are, except Donald Trump disrupted the entire shift. Now, fast forward to 2024. European farmers are so fed up that they are spraying government buildings with manure in protest. I hate this. I hate this. But is anyone listening? Have you seen any of this in any real detail on the mainstream news? Remember what were they called? The yellow vest protests. The coverage was everywhere. It was on 24/7. Why such sporadic reporting on these farmer convoys and protests? Why doesn't the average American know what this is about? Why is no one in the mainstream asking them why they're leaving their fields to protest in the city? It gets a mere minor mention here in America, or you'll see crap like this. This is an article in The Guardian. It's published under opinion. It's the far right. The word diesel is only mentioned one time. Instead, the author's focus is on the headline. In his expert opinion, these farmers are, quote, being exploited by the far right. Wow, there he is. He cracked the code. Boy, that's really hard. It's that evil far right running around farms and fields with megaphones and their brown shirts and their small, funny mustaches. This isn't about Europe's crazy Agenda 2030 plan. No, it couldn't be. It's not about the price of diesel spiking through the roof or fertilizer becoming too expensive and unavailable because it's all being cut back, or the fact that government regulators have had their heads half up the cattle's behinds listening for cow farts. No, it can't be any of those things. In Sweden, they're actually taking the farmers' farmlands. In case you don't know, the Netherlands is the breadbasket of Europe. Okay, so let me give the journalist of the world a pass here. It's not like Europe's radical assault on farmers and food is published online or anything. I mean, that would be nuts. Oh, wait, actually, yes, it is. Directly from the European Commission. Here's their plan to completely upend food production. But it is all masked in words like to increase the resilience of agriculture and forestry against climate change. Okay, that's fine. But what are you doing? What are we trading off here? I want you to take a look at what's laid out under climate change and agriculture in the EU, because it reveals everything on what the green agenda is really all about. They point out that agriculture accounts for 10% of the total greenhouse gas emissions in the EU. The next line lays out their battle attack plan for, in effect, a pseudo-nationalization of every industry and means of production in Europe. This is critical. This is where you have to understand. Communism, the state owns everything. Fascism is a public-private partnership. Now, they say farming emissions come behind energy. Wow, transport, residential, all kinds of different things, commercial. And then, finally, it's agriculture. They want direct government interference in basically every industry. There is nothing left. This is the 20th century fascism, and it has nothing to do with concentration camps. It has nothing to do with climate. This is a power play. So many people who are on the streets, I actually feel bad for people who actually believe in Marxism or communism, because I think they are, again, useful idiots. That's not who's going to control it. The left was right years ago, and I don't know why they don't see it now. It is about giant corporations and governments getting in bed with giant corporations. It's about seizing control and nothing else. But the problem for the modern fascist is the farmers are not ones who typically let anyone push them around. And that's why we're seeing farmers protest all over Europe right now. The EU's agriculture climate document goes on. And what I'm going to show you is what they say they're going to do. Sounding as benign as they possibly can, but what it really means. They talk about cracking down on two things. First, methane. This could be anything from the size of herds to the kinds of feed used to feed their herds. Just with this, it radically alters how much food is available, and it incurs new expenses that were not there previously. I don't know if you've met a farmer, but they're not usually flush with cash. Expenses that are already probably not affordable, and considering how high operating costs have gotten lately. More on that later. But first, anything that will control the cows from farting, they've got to bring the animal population down. The next thing they want to stop is nitrous oxide. This is where fertilizer comes in. But we know where this leads to, and it leads to a full-on ban. It has to if they want to cut the emissions. 2 years ago, this is what led to the absolute collapse of food production in Sri Lanka. This was supposed to be the model of the WEF and the climate change model. They forced harvests at small farms to go from around 60 bags of crops to 10. It completely collapsed the Sri Lankan economy and their food system. It was immediately erased from all of the World Economic Forum and EU and everybody who's planning all of this. They went from everywhere, and we have all the documents everywhere saying this is the model, to, uh-oh, holy crap, take it down. European Commission's plan for farmers include green direct payments, bribes for anyone that bends the knees. Listen to what they actually have to do to get this money. They have to maintain permanent grassland. In other words, farm less land, which means less food. This is what's going to happen with BLM land. And if you're out from the West, you know how important BLM land is going to be. It won't allow you to graze on it. Undertake crop diversification. Now, I'm sure as a rancher, I know I never thought about, gee, wait a minute, I should not plant the same thing over and over. Of course not. Now the government is telling us how to rotate our crops. How on earth have these farmers survived literally thousands of years of experience without these European Commission experts? I don't know. And finally, they have to dedicate 5% of arable land to ecological focus areas. Again, less crops, less food. That's fine if you've come up with ways to grow more food with less. But by taking away your fertilizer, fertilizer is responsible for about 40% of our crops. Without it, you lose 40%. Now keep in mind, in Europe, these are not suggestions. This document describes the monitoring process, how it will be deployed, and it's all backed on a legal basis. If the media bothered to ask the farmers of Europe what they were protesting about, this is what they would tell them. All of these restrictions equal less food for people, but also the inability of farmers and ranchers to make a living for their own families. I want to stress to you that this doesn't have anything at all to do with the climate. It doesn't. What it's really all about is forcing the agriculture sector into a partnership with the government. Have you ever wondered why the biggest ranch and farmland owner is Bill Gates, and he suddenly got into that? Why? How come all of these gigantic companies are gobbling up all the farmland and we don't have local farms? This used to be called fascism. Now it's just called Build Back Better or the Great Reset or however else they plan to rebrand it in the future. But this is not just happening in Europe. They're further along than we are. Joe Biden has recently stated that the farmers under his administration are thriving, but I know a lot of farmers. Has he talked to many of them? Because they will tell you a very different story. They are on the edge. One Kansas farmer told Fox News they are, quote, now in survival mode. They listed the volatile market, Also, see if this sounds familiar, the out-of-control diesel costs. Biden's Build Back Better has not only wreaked economic havoc on most families, you have to have diesel if you want something from another part of the world. Diesel moves ships. The ships carry cargo that then, after it crosses the ocean, is put onto a train which runs on diesel, which is then put on a truck which runs on diesel. If you solve the diesel problem first, then we can stop using diesel. But until you solve that, you can't stop it. This is a stealth war on Americans and American farmers. Let me show you a graph on what inflation has done to operating costs on farms and ranches. 20% higher taxes, 35% higher for fuel, 38% higher for livestock, 78% higher for fertilizer. Since Joe Biden became president, operating costs on farms have increased by $100 billion. I want to emphasize, however, this is not about Joe Biden. This is happening all over the world. The total cost for American farmers to raise crops and livestock is now a record high $460 billion. Now, how are farmers who are on the edge already able to afford that? Well, maybe the better question is that the actual point? Do you want farmers in a no-win situation where the partnership with the government is the only option left on the table? And just like the EU, Joe Biden announced a bribe method to reel farmers in and ranchers in. Last November, Biden announced an over $5 billion package for rural communities. It's much of the same crap pushed by the European Commission that I just showed you. I'll have all of these documents up at glennbeck.com. You need to read all of them. Don't take my word for it. Do not trust me. I don't ask for your trust. This is what we have found. This is what we can prove to you is actually happening because we have the documents. But do your own homework. What's happening in Europe will soon be our reality. The one thing that is missing is the compliance checks and the legal framework punishment. But that is also in the works. This is why farmers are rising up all over the world. As I showed you, people in Ireland are rising up over immigration as well. Consider how bad the economy might be right now with the average person. I think the economy is booming for people that have high salaries. When this insane high inflation really hits, people are hurting now. But believe it or not, polls show that the top policy concern for American voters is immigration. Why? Because they're connected. This prompted a European and Canadian-style convoy to, in their words, take back our border. By the time they reached Texas, the border convoy had grown to nearly 300 vehicles. I like the farmer movement in Europe. I wish they wouldn't destroy property. I don't think that's the way to go. But this border movement will continue to grow unless something drastic happens, and fast. The border is absolutely out of control, and in the recent proposed bill in the Senate, it's a dumpster fire as well. I'll leave out the fact that it is tied to what equates as a massive war bill. Thank God it didn't pass. It's not the merits of immigration, it was war. This bill also would allow 8,500 illegals per day. It would subsidize sanctuary cities that have been abusing illegal immigration, basically awarding those who have been breaking the law. When it comes to immigration, securing the border, the truth is now painfully obvious. No one is serious about solving the problem. And I don't know why the states won't work together on this, because we're all in the same boat. But there's too much capital to be gained, political capital on both sides, and we are the ones that will suffer for it.